Good morning to Georgia. I'm meteorologist Jordan West. Got a lot going on in the tropics right now. We have Fiona and Gaston in the northern portions of the Atlantic Ocean. We have Hermine off the western coast of Africa, as well as some development going on in the central Atlantic Ocean. But all eyes are currently on what was tropical depression number 9 and what is now tropical storm Ian. Now, tropical storm Ian, this is as of 11 a.m. Winds at 45 miles per hour, pressure 1003 millibars, and the movement is just about the same with this overall system. Winds have not increased, pressure has dropped just a little bit, but there are many factors that we look at in terms of the strengthening and weakening of this storm. And the main factor at the moment is the wind shear. Now, previously, this system was over where this green area is, and that's all wind shear. Wind shear is basically the change in wind speed as well as wind direction with height. And what that does is it basically tilts the storm, halting any further development that we would typically see. Another thing we look at is water vapor, and this is our water vapor satellite imagery. And for example, let's take a look at Fiona. Fiona was a Category 4 hurricane, now just an area of low pressure. As you can see, all this dry air, this orange that you see here, kind of funneled into Fiona, and that's what made it weaken significantly. Meanwhile, we have what is now tropical storm Ian. There isn't a lot of dry air surrounding Ian. We have a little bit up here towards the Gulf, but overall not a lot. We have all this dry air that we do have plans on moving soon. Overall, the storm is a lot stronger than the dry air that is interacting with. But that's another thing we look at. And if you notice, the eye, or at least the circulation, is off in the eastern half of the storm, while all of the clouds, the water vapor, the system itself is on the western half. That's how you know it's tilted, and that's how you know it's the wind shear that's responsible. Last but not least, we look at the sea surface temperatures, and when the sea surface temperatures are this warm, especially in the Gulf of Mexico, that's the last little element we need to kick up a pretty strong storm, especially as it heads towards the Gulf of Mexico. Now, where is this system going? This is a GFS and Euro model as of Tuesday at 8 a.m. It looks like they both agree that it will be making landfall in Cuba, western portions of Cuba, as we get into Tuesday morning. The strengthening, well, we'll get into that in a bit, but overall, the directions of these storms tend to diverge as we get into Wednesday. This is where the big question mark is. The Euro has it going eastward. The GFS has it going a little bit westward, staying in the Gulf of Mexico. The Euro has it making landfall around 4 a.m. on Thursday in Florida. And then GFS, once again, still in the Gulf of Mexico, moving into 1 a.m. Friday. Similar situation. GFS decides to make landfall in the panhandle of Florida. The Euro is kind of headed off the Atlantic Ocean. The difference is between the two storms, even though they end up back at the same point, so where the GFS kind of moves westward back towards central Georgia, while the Euro ends up in the Atlantic. The Atlantic waters are still pretty warm, so it could re-strengthen if it decides to decouple once it moves over some landmass. So a lot to break down with this system. Where it goes, we still don't know. It all starts in the same spots, end at the same spot, but we don't know what happens in between. And that's going to be a deciding factor on who's going to see severe weather, what type of severe weather we're going to get over the next week or so. Now, let's look at the track. Like I said, the winds are already at 45 miles per hour as we get into Sunday, Tuesday, 8 a.m. Like I said, it'll be a Category 3 hurricane when it makes landfall in Cuba. As we head into Wednesday, 8 a.m. and Thursday, 8 a.m., it will be dropped significantly to a Category 2 hurricane because it will make landfall and won't be interacting with the warm waters. Now, this plot here is typically created by the National Hurricane Center. It looks like they're kind of evening things out depending on where the Euro and GFS models are saying. So we're keeping a close eye out on this cone. If it changes, it updates every 12 hours or so. Sometimes it doesn't change. Sometimes it goes a whole different direction, and sometimes it changed just a little bit like it did in the last advisory. But as always, we will keep you up to date on all things tropics. That's not the only thing going on with these storms. We also have tropical storm watches in effect for all of Jamaica and hurricane watches as it develops over these warm warm waters for the Cayman Islands. So look out for those. A lot going on again with this system. Looks like the models are still updating as we speak, but Tropical Storm Ian, the GFS ensemble members, are all headed towards the southeast with a few little other members kind of just straggling the Gulf of Mexico. But it's good that everything is starting to align with itself compared to what we've been seeing over the past few days. Meanwhile, post-tropical Fiona is now starting to become a little bit more of a remnant low. It's starting to completely decouple. It's headed towards Canada. Nothing really of concern anymore like we have been seeing in the past few hours with this system. Meanwhile, we have this little guy over here, Tropical Storm Gaston. Winds also at 45 miles per hour, but it's not really bothering anybody either. So we'll just leave it out there in the Atlantic and leave it alone. And then we have Tropical Storm Hermine, very active for this time of year, right off the western coast of Africa. Not much to see because the satellite kind of stops once we get to Africa. The orbit, of the satellite only goes so far ultimately, but pressure at 1002, pretty low, but winds only at 40 miles per hour. It's also headed north and westward. Again, nothing to worry about in terms of Hermine. And then here's our tropical outlook that I was looking at earlier. We have 30% chance over the next 5 days. Not too much to worry about either. Got a lot going on in the tropics, which is not uncommon for this time of year. Today, we are still kind of in that hurricane peak zone. And when we see these storms, we typically see them form all in similar situations in the same areas, especially for September. Here are our September formation regions. As you can see, little areas that we are already seeing develop. Fiona, for example, as well as Ian, looks like are really, copying what we've been typically seeing in September during hurricane season. So none of this is uncommon, but as always, we will keep you up to date. Now, if any of those storms, any more storms start to form throughout this Atlantic hurricane season, we have Ian, Julia, Carl, Lisa, Martin, and Nicole. Those are the next names on the hurricane list. So if you know anybody named those names, just make sure you, be on their nice side for now.